Hi everyone, welcome back to The Whole Truth. I'm Gil Arbel, your attorney at law. So there's a conspiracy that's going around, and it's been going around, and mostly propagated by the one and only Candace Owens, that Israel is behind the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And if you're like me, you're wondering, how did this conspiracy even come to be? Is it just another let's blame Israel for everything under the sun conspiracy? And the answer is yes, basically, but there's a little bit more to it than that. So I'm going to explain the beginning, or what the impetus for the conspiracy is. The single WhatsApp message that Charlie sent, I think on September 9th, 2 days before he was assassinated, that has fed so much of this conspiracy. And who the players are behind it, besides Candace. And now it's picked up by a lot of people. So before we get started with that, I want to say hi to everyone in the chat. And if you can just give me a 4 in the chat to let me know that you can hear me okay, that would be great. I'm trying to get my setup better. I am making progress for those of you that are watching. But hi, CC. Thank you. Number 1. Can you hear me okay? Just give me a 4 if you can, and then I'll get started. And I even brought a whiteboard. Thank you, CC. I even brought a whiteboard to help explain this because there is a little bit of moving parts, and it might help to draw it out. I already have the end of the conspiracy web posted on the whiteboard, so I just have to connect it to the beginning. Hi, Greg. So before we get into it, I just wanted to play this clip of Dan Bongino, and this will kind of come together, the relevance of it, shortly. Make myself in the background here. Now, if there's any problem with the audio from the video that I'm about to play, then type 5. If I don't see a 5, then I am assuming that you can hear it okay.
Joe Kent, again, is just forfeited all his credit. I feel bad for this guy. He's gone through a lot. He is not my personal enemy, folks. For those of you who want this to be personal, I was very close with Joe. I showed you the picture yesterday. I was more than happy to go visit him when he was there. It's not personal. But Joe keeps insisting that he was somehow, despite no investigative authority whatsoever, blocked from the Charlie Kirk investigation, although he was not an investigator and had no authority to investigate the Charlie Kirk investigation. So he responded to yesterday saying, well, I'm just going to play a little bit of it, and I want to explain how he actually outs himself here yet again, and yet people still believe, oh, I trusted. Okay, great. Play this. Can you stop when I tell you to stop? Because I don't want to go through the whole thing. All right, check it out.
Okay. And just for those of you who have been living under a rock a little bit, Dan Bongino, the guy who's just speaking, is the former deputy director of the FBI under Kash Patel during the Trump administration. And Joe Kent, he was, I don't know off the top of my head his exact title, but something to do with counterterrorism. I think it's about to come out. He resigned basically because of the Iran war. And in his resignation letter, he blames it on Israel, which, I wouldn't have a problem with. But then he goes straight to Tucker Carlson, and so we kind of know what he's getting at, what's motivating him, right? Because as anyone knows who's been following Tucker, the guy cannot go 5 seconds without trashing Israel and Jews. It's like an obsession with him. He never talked about Israel on Fox News. It's kind of interesting because he didn't even talk about Israel like neutrally, favorably, or unfavorably on Fox News. I don't know if anyone else noticed that. It was kind of just like a taboo topic for him. He just never touched it. But ever since he's been fired from Fox News, it's pretty much all he talks about, no matter what. And so the fact that Joe Kent immediately runs to Tucker Carlson's show after he resigns, and it seems like he was going to get fired anyways, is very telling. But without further ado, let's see what.
I'm going to briefly describe the role of the National Counterterrorism Center in the investigation of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC analysts are a part of every joint terrorism task force throughout the entire country. The JTTFs are typically led by the FBI. NCTC's role within the JTTF is to determine if there is any foreign nexus, so that would be a foreign country, a foreign government, a foreign individual, a foreign company. If there's any foreign connection or nexus to an act of domestic terrorism, like the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So that's what NCTC analysts were doing as part of the JTTF to assist the investigation of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC analysts were operating at the request of the FBI to determine if there was any kind of foreign connection or foreign nexus to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC is a unique organization within the intelligence community. It's part of the intelligence community. You can see all the operational traffic, all the raw reporting coming from the forward-facing intelligence community, the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, etc. But it can also see the raw operational reporting coming from the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies.
Stop. I'm just going to leave this here. I'm really sorry Joe Kent, when he decided to swear in for NCTC director, had no idea what his job was. Notice how he outs himself here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to help Joe and you, okay? The thumbnail is devastating. We didn't do it on purpose. I don't want to be accused of like the thumbnail. Everybody's got a bad thumbnail out there. Ladies and gentlemen in the chat who've been members of the USIC or JTF, do you know what raw intelligence is? Raw intelligence is exactly as it sounds. If you're out there on X or Snapchat and someone posts a video saying that space aliens killed Joey Bag of Donuts in Georgia in a terror attack, that's what's considered raw intelligence. I don't know if Joe knows this or not. What would happen is an analyst who's not an investigator would get that and give it to who? An investigator, i.e. not Joe. I've already told you they have no investigative authority at all. Someone should just ask him that question. I don't know why he keeps saying this. They would give it to an analyst. The investigative work is done by investigators who have power to investigate, subpoena powers, arrest power. Is any of this hard? The investigators determine if raw intelligence is then actionable intelligence. Joe has nothing to do with that, nor does his...
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear this okay, because I know I've been having tech issues. Give me a 4 if you can hear Dan Bongino. The 4, quick 4, quick 4. Okay, thank you, Cece. You're the best. Yeah, Sedona. I mean, it could be that, or it could just be that he's an honest person, right? So.
Shop. When they don't determine it's actionable intelligence, that raw intelligence is not thrown out, but we've investigated it. There's no lead there. He keeps insisting he somehow had that bridge roll, turning raw intelligence into actionable intelligence because they were investigated. That is not their job. They have no power to do it. Okay, done. I'm not doing this anymore. I can't. This guy, he can comment all he wants. I really feel bad for this guy. And if you're falling for this op, just know you're being played for a fool. Why he's trying to insert himself into a very serious criminal trial going on right now. by constantly commenting as a guy who was trusted with the public trust is just disgraceful at this point. Moving on. I'm done.
So Greg writes, he tried to pretend Candace didn't claim he was the source of the Israeli phones report. I assume you mean Joe Kent tried to claim that. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm going to go into the WhatsApp story shortly. But Sedona has a problem with Dan Bongino because Dan Bongino hasn't jumped on the Jew hatred train like so many others. He's a man of integrity, not a grifter. So, that's probably Sedona's biggest problem with him, but I don't know. Okay, so Dan Bongino in this clip is explaining that Joe Kent really is not an investigator. Maybe Joe Kent wanted to be an investigator, but that's not his role as was a counterterrorism chief. More, and this is not coming from me. This is coming from Dan Bongino. Joe's role was not investigative. It was more analytical. Now, why would there even be an assumption of a foreign nexus with the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Obviously there could have been, and I'm not saying that there can't be. I'm sure that Charlie has a lot of enemies, but it wouldn't be Israel. And if you think that Israel killed Charlie Kirk, I think you're retarded. That's just my opinion. But it could have been, Iran, Russia, China, Cuba, who knows? A lot of people don't like the conservative movement in America, and Charlie Kirk was one of the leading public figures of the MAGA movement. So certainly there could have been a foreign nexus. But once we apprehended Tyler Robinson, who surrendered and confessed and had DNA on the weapon and was caught on surveillance footage, and, we could go through all the evidence again. We're going to see a lot more at the trial. That really, the connection would have to be through Tyler Robinson. And there's been no evidence presented. I'm not refusing to accept any evidence. There's just been none. So where did this whole conspiracy that Israel is behind Charlie Kirk's assassination come from? Well, first off, Ian Carroll, who is one of Candace Owens' biggest cucks, came out pretty much right away and said Israel was behind it, before there was any evidence whatsoever for anything, right? So we know that there is a distinct segment of the population that really wants Israel to be behind it because they want Israel to be hated, because these people hate Israel. But what they found, what they point to, is a single WhatsApp message, again, from Charlie Kirk. He was part of this WhatsApp group. And if you saw my video yesterday, I'm not going to play it again, but I'll just recap it because it was an interview on JNS TV or JTV of Rabbi Pesach Wolicki. So let's bring out the whiteboard. I'm a visual learner. And let's explain. Charlie Kirk was part of a WhatsApp group. And I think it had something around 8 or 9 members. We don't know all the... Let me adjust my camera. Okay. We don't know all the members of the group, but we know some of them. Obviously, Charlie was part of it. You had the only 2 that I'm aware of, Josh Hammer and, more importantly, a rabbi who lives in Israel. Like, he's American born. His name is Pesach Wolicki. You can watch his commentary on YouTube. He actually has a lot of great commentary. He doesn't just talk about this. He talks about Iran, other Israeli news, what have you. And I realize that might be reversed for you all. But, okay. Now, what was the point of the WhatsApp group? According to Rabbi Pesach, this group was created by Charlie for the purposes of countering or responding to anti-Israel questions on on college campuses. So, as I'm sure we know, everyone knows by now, Israel really stirs a lot of people's passions, right? Genocide or massacres in Nigeria, no one seems to care. Massacres in Yemen, no one cares. Not really that interesting to people. But when Israel does something, an Israeli trips a Palestinian in the West Bank, it's like, front page news, the UN is going to have a special session. So anyways, Charlie found that about half of the questions he got on his college campus tours were about Israel. And Charlie was a defender of Israel. And if you don't believe me, just look up everything he said about Israel over his entire public life, okay? He was definitely a friend of Israel. But that was not his main issue. That was not what he wanted to go to college campuses and talk about. He wanted to talk about free market capitalism. He wanted to talk about securing the border. He wanted to talk about Trump's policies and why American and conservative principles like starting a family, traditional male or husband roles, things of that nature. But of course, on college campuses, most of his questions are about Israel. So he wanted to be able to counter all the propaganda and answer well. So he started this WhatsApp group. And again, I don't know everybody that was in it. But Charlie, he liked to get different opinions. He didn't always take everything that was provided to him at face value. He looked into his own thing. And one of his biggest sources for Israel, for countering anti-Israel propaganda, was this guy, Rabbi Pesach Wolicki. That's the creation of this WhatsApp group, okay? Now, shortly before Charlie's assassination, okay, there was a planned TPUSA event. And at this planned TPUSA event, or maybe it was an AmFest, something related, something that Charlie was putting on. They were going to have Tucker Carlson. Okay? Now, Tucker, I'll just put a swastika, okay, to remind everybody. Now, a lot of Jewish donors don't like Tucker Carlson. I don't like Tucker Carlson. So, what happened, and this was pretty much even before Tucker Carlson jumped down the... I don't know if this was before or after the demon mauled him. Well, while he was in bed with his dogs, he was mauled by a demon. I don't know if this was before or after, but it was basically before Tucker went full deep end Jew hater, Goebbels. But he was already going that way. So, anyways, the fact that TPUSA was going to have Tucker Carlson as a speaker meant that Jewish donors were not happy, right? And in particular, one Jewish donor, I'm sure this was, maybe after a few others, said that he was going to pull a donation of $2 million from TPUSA. Now, personally, I don't blame this guy. I would not give $2 million of my money to any organization that is okay with Tucker Carlson, okay? But Charlie Kirk was a coalition builder. And Charlie, his main issue was not Israel. Again, he loved Israel based on everything that we've seen in public. But that was not his main thing. And he didn't want to lose Tucker Carlson and Tucker Carlson's audience. And so he was frustrated. And in this WhatsApp message, in this WhatsApp group, Charlie messaged another Jewish donor, just rescinded $2 million donation because Tucker Carlson's scheduled to speak. This, leaves me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause or something. I'm not saying it verbatim necessarily, but something to that effect. And then he also, to emphasize this, said, I might as well just platform Candace. Now, I think that was just him venting, right? What people say in private messages does not necessarily reflect how they feel all the time. And in fact, we know that he wasn't actually planning on leaving the pro-Israel cause. And by the way, the rabbi in the interview, if you have a chance, watch it. I did yesterday, made a good point, which is that Charlie didn't say that he's leaving the pro-Israel cause because he was so upset about what Israel was doing in Gaza, or he was so upset about the strikes in Iran in June, or he was so upset about Jewish influence in Trump's administration, right? He was just upset that this Jewish donor was taking away or rescinding $2 million. And first, the donor obviously has the right to do it, and I personally don't blame him or her. But Charlie has every right to be upset about it. And Charlie was upset because he was going out of his way all the time to defend Israel. And he was probably the biggest asset Israel had. Because here you had a non-Jewish, young, smart, leadership, quality, future president who was very adamantly in favor of Israel. But despite all that, this Jewish donor wanted to rescind the donation, and that upset Charlie. And so he's venting. Now, this happened 2 days before the assassination. So to think that this is what prompted, because there's been nothing else shown that shows any indication that he was leaving the Israel cause. He might have said some things kind of offhand on PBD and Megyn Kelly, but he's also said many other things. He had Ben Shapiro on shortly before. So he was not leaving the pro-Israel cause. He was venting. This happened 2 days before the assassination. To imagine that Israel could plan this whole sophisticated assassination, setting up Tyler Robinson as a patsy within 2 days is retarded. It's retarded. If you believe it, you're retarded. Take an IQ test. If you don't believe me, take an IQ test. Do it under, normal standardized conditions, and you'll see the result. Okay, so he sends this WhatsApp message, Charlie does. Now, what happens with the WhatsApp message? I'm just going to put message here. This message is what ends up in Candace Owens' possession. How does it end up in the cockroach? How does the cockroach sniff it out? Or if you prefer, sewer rat. Well, Andrew Kolvet, who I like very much. I mean, I don't know him very much. I don't know him personally or anything, but just from what I've seen, he seems like a genuinely good guy. But anyways, he turns this over to Joe Kent. Why does Andrew Kolvet have it? I don't know. Maybe he was one of the members. Maybe someone who was a member gave it to him. Andrew Kolvet wanted to leave no stone unturned in the investigation. If anything, that should lead Candace to think that he's not part of it. But because Andrew is against Candace going after Erica Kirk, of course, Candace has to hate Andrew and accuse him of being part of it. But Andrew is actually the person who had the screenshot and gave it to Joe. Oh, wait, sorry. I spelled that wrong. I spelled C-U-N-T. Joe Kent, who was basically just a sympathy hire by Trump. He's lost every election that he's ran, and he was hired to his position out of sympathy for, he's lost a wife in battle, or sorry, in service. And honestly, before this whole situation, I actually like Joe Kent, but he's obviously chosen to join the dark side with Tucker Carlson and MTG and Thomas Massey and everyone. So Joe Kent gets it. Now, this is what Dan Bongino is referred to. Joe Kent is not even an investigator, but he gets this and he drops it on some shit so that Candace Owens goes after it. Okay? That's how Candace Owens came across this WhatsApp message. That is the basis of the whole Israel conspiracy. Now, since then, there's been this talk about, there were 12 Israeli cell phones on campus of UVU, 12 Israeli registered phones. I haven't been able to find any verification for that, but as I said in the previous video, I am not surprised at all that there were Israelis visiting, going to a Charlie Kirk event. Not at all. There's a lot of Israelis in America. Israelis travel a lot. They're very technologically connected, so they're going to bring their phones. Just like most people, if they're going to travel to Europe, they're going to bring their own phones, so you don't have to get a new number and what have you. So 12 Israelis on UVU. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that there weren't more, to be honest. Now, I don't know how big UVU is. I don't know how many Israeli exchange students are there, but 12 seems kind of low to me. I'm going to go back to sitting down. But Joe Kent, instead of actually, doing anything useful with that information, which was not really that relevant information anyways, gave it to Candace Owens. And if you're giving information that you think implicates Israel to Candace Owens of all people, I don't think that you're serious about finding out the truth. I think you have a political objective in mind, political motivation. Jump on the anti-Israel bandwagon. That is pretty good way to get some followers when you're kind of a nobody, right? Joe Kent basically hit the ceiling of his political career and saw this as a way to get ahead. Join forces with Candace and Tucker with the anti-Israel bandwagon and ride that. I mean, he's getting interviews now with Jimmy Dore, who is another Nazi. So that's the long and short of it. Does anyone have any questions? We have Sedona here. Sedona, you keep saying that you're connected with Candace Owens' cult, but I think you're just kind of trying to latch onto their coattails, because I keep asking you to share the cockroach with Candy, and I haven't even been hit with all the Jew haters. I mean, I'm Jewish. I support Israel. I support Trump. I think Candace Owens is a cockroach. I think Tucker Carlson's a Nazi. I think that I'm basically like the worst type of person, and so I should be like bombarded with the candy cult, and I haven't been yet. So Sedona, I don't think you're really that connected with them, but it's not a cult like MAGA. I know it's much worse. It's much worse. MAGA has other thoughts besides Israel and Jews. What do I think of Baron Coleman? Well, I did a video about his interview with Julian Dory. And I was not impressed. I was not impressed. I actually talked about it a little bit when I was a guest with Joshua Carr. I haven't been following Baron much. I know what Gary of Paramount Tactical thinks of him, and I respect Gary's opinion very highly. I have high respect for Gary. So Gary thinks he's a grifter. Baron is. I kind of just think he's like really stupid. And yes, there are a lot of stupid lawyers, but that's a cool comment, S Files. But yeah, I mean his theories were just retarded. That word gets thrown around too much these days, right? But no, Baron Coleman's theories were retarded. He was implying that somebody in the crowd at UVU was giving a signal because they did this. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Watch my video about the Baron Coleman interview with Julian Dory. It was the other thing that he thought was very suspicious was that there were two people that were part of Charlie Kirk's team that were wearing backpacks. That was suspicious to him. Even Julian Dory, who seems kind of like a gullible little, kid, was like, no, people sometimes just wear backpacks. Doesn't mean that you're part of Mossad. In fact, I don't think Mossad would be wearing backpacks. But so that's my opinion of Baron Coleman. The Candy Cult does hate me and other regular Jews. S Files, that was a good one. That was good. No, Sedona, do you want to see my X feed? You want to see how much Jew hatred I get? Now I don't know if it's all Candy Cult members or if it's just day-to-day Jew haters, but you would be astounded. It's not just people that have a problem with Mossad. That's such a straw man. It's such a like, oh, every time we criticize, you guys call us anti-Semitic every time we criticize Israeli policy. No, it's because you're anti-Semitic. Not everybody, but so I wanted to find the clip from Tucker Carlson, and I just did a search for it, and I couldn't. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play my own clip that shows his clip, so that you guys can see how this is being propagated. Hi everyone, welcome back to The Whole Truth. Gil Arbel, your attorney at law. Who's that handsome man? Now that the preliminary hearing of Tyler Robinson is done, I want to revisit an interview that Tucker Carlson gave a few weeks ago. But before I play that, and specifically just one statement from the interview, just a little bit more of a background about myself. No, you guys don't need to know that. Test and wise is
Road Charlie Kirk was murdered.
Yeah.
And he was not murdered for his opinions on transgenderism, obviously. He was, I believe, and most people who knew him well, as I did, and was friends with him as I was, believe he was most likely murdered for his evolving views on Israel.
We just see. Tucker Carlson said, obviously. No, it's not obvious, Tucker. It's not obvious. We watched the preliminary hearing. What's obvious is that Tyler Robinson is guilty. You are demon possessed by your own admission. You know what's crazy about Tucker Carlson's demon possession? This is a guy who wakes up with scratches. Sedona, 1 second. He wakes up with scratches. Now, he's either lying about the scratches or he actually woke up with scratches. After sleeping in a bed with his dogs. And he even says this. And he doesn't find this, like, obvious. Like, I love my dogs too. But it could be that maybe when I was sleeping, one of them heard something and clawed me by accident, right? I mean, I don't sleep with my dogs in my bed, but if I did and I woke up with scratch marks, that would be my initial take. I wouldn't jump to demons. But whatever. I'm going to go with it because if he believes he was attacked by demons, then maybe he was attacked by demons. But when he was offered exorcism, and I'm not a big believer in these things, but if you're going to go with the demon scenario instead of the dog scenario, then why not go through an exorcism? But Tucker's like, no, I don't buy into that. I just think I was mauled by a demon in my sleep. Exorcism? No, that's voodoo. Like, what is wrong with this guy? Hold on 1 second. Sorry, my daughter stepped in. So yeah, kind of weird, right? To go so far as to say you were mauled by demons, not your dogs, and then be like, nah, but I'm not gonna do an exorcism. That's like voodoo. AWJ Williams, Kanye doesn't hate the true Jews, just the imposters. Okay. Right. Because being Jewish is so awesome. We're so loved by so many people that it's like we're imposters. Okay, buddy. Kind of sounds like you're jealous. Okay. Now, I had some more videos that I wanted to go through, and by the way, tomorrow I'm going to be with Lady Luck. Everyone check that out. That should be good. Let's see what Joshua Carr has to say. Yeah, you're a true Jew. That's why you're calling the rest of the Jews imposters. Yeah, that's what true Jew would do, right? Oh, this was the one that I actually was here doing a guest on. I can't watch Glenn Greenwald. You want to talk about an imposter Jew, Glenn Greenwald. Does anyone have any good advice here about what to watch? We could just go through X, but X sometimes gives kind of lags up. I don't know. When somebody calls Jews imposters and then says, I'm the true Jew, kind of sounds like you're jealous. Like you wish you were. Wasn't King David had red hair? I haven't seen any black people with red hair. Not saying that black people can't be Jews. There are black Jews. But I'm just saying that, if you're going to say that, oh, white people can't be Jews, then that's a question I have for you. So, I responded to this. Let me see. This post by Nick Mattel, who was responding himself or commenting himself on Thomas Massey criticizing a person who is an army veteran, and this person in their profile pic, and I can maybe find it in my notifications, had both an American flag and a Star of David. Not even the Israeli flag, just the Star of David. And Thomas Massey accused him of being loyal to to America second. And so I said, that's disgusting. It's not even an Israeli flag. It's just a Jewish Star of David. Well, and maybe I was wrong, because maybe he did have an Israeli flag. But does anybody else have problem when Italian Americans have an Italian flag in their bio? Or Irish Americans have an Irish flag, or Mexican Americans have a Mexican flag? Does anyone care? Does anyone find that insulting? No, you can. Why can't you have affection for more than one country? I believe I'm America first. America is the country of myself, my family, my immediate family, my children. It's my future. But I do have affection for Israel. I have family there. My dad grew up there. So I don't think that that's a contradiction. I don't think it's inconsistent. I mean, if America and Israel went to war, I would side with America. But thank God that's not going to, pray to God that won't ever happen. So I don't see any problem with having affection for any other country besides America. So I said I thought it was disgusting, and I probably jumped a little bit too fast into calling him a neo-Nazi, Thomas Massey. But, but then the responses I get are here. Waffle. If you give, I've heard of it. So maybe you could give me a quick refresher, and I can tell you what I know about it, but I don't know. But I have heard of it, so maybe I have some knowledge, something interesting to say about it. But you got to tell me. Tell me a gist. So, anyways, this person said, "Hey, asshat, he's an Israeli Times writer. It's the Star of Remphan." So this seems to be like a new thing. Star of Remphan is what they call a Star of David now. Jew haters call Star of David Star of Remphan. Has anyone seen this? Hi, Juju. By the way, I know I missed saying hi to a lot of you. Angie, Cece, Alita, Saves, Nikki. I already said hi to S Files, but hi again. Shelly Belly, you seem to be new. Please subscribe. Help me grow my channel. Sedona, So Donut, you know what? You seem like you just seem a little lost to me. I don't think you don't seem like you're a hateful person. You just seem a little bit lost. Um Nick Mattel made a video about this. Is it worth watching? I like Nick Mattel, but I'm not gonna put on a 4-hour video. So what's the title of the Nick Mattel video? Angie, if I didn't say, sorry. Everyone here, you know I love you. It's just a short Shelly Belly. Okay, I'll do. I always take advice on what to watch. You guys know that I just like going live even when I have nothing really special to say. And Nick Mattel's awesome, but his videos are like 5 hours, so I'm not gonna start one. But yeah, let's watch this.
Hey, Thomas Massey, can you explain to me why you told this U.S. Army veteran that America is his second country? Why did you say that to him? It seems like the only piece of information you had was that he was Jewish. Is that what you're doing right now? Is a Jewish man who served in the U.S. Army something you never fucking did because you're not a veteran and you never fucking served? Is that what we're doing right now? Can you explain that? Because that's what it seems like to me. Is there another reason you told him America's not really his country? A guy who's done more than you have for this country? I'm just very curious if you can answer that question. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, served for almost 12 years. Now I'm not Jewish. Am I more American than him? How does it work? Where do you put Jews on this little like totem pole that you made? For context, the Jewish man commented under this post by Thomas Massey, where Thomas Massey is mad at President Trump because he just signed a deal that's going to lower ground beef prices for all Americans. The irony is, I agree somewhat with what Thomas Massey is saying here, but I think there should be a balance. I think it's good that President Trump lowers the prices now because there are a lot of Americans struggling, but there should be a work towards something like this for the longer term goal. But regardless if I agree or disagree, or if you disagree or agree, a Jewish man simply comments, hey, why would it be bad for Americans to save money? And all he saw is a Star of David, and he goes, America, your second country? And this is why every night on my live, I get people who come up, not just like talking about Thomas Massey, but him too, when you guys go, well, how come you guys always call people anti-Semites for criticizing Israel? Because this is always where it fucking leads. The mask always comes off. Do you think we're not capable of understanding what people actually mean? Heck, I'm not even Jewish. I can figure it out. I can only imagine Jews who have been dealing with this shit since they were kids. They know. Hey, Thomas Massey, can you explain to me why you told this?
Nick Mattel is what we call a mensch. Oh, Waffle. Have you seen the video I did with the watch party of Elika Laban? I mean, that's like the extent of my familiarity with it, but if you haven't seen that one, that's a good one. I mean, I pretty much just play her video, so she does a good video. I offer some commentary, mostly just saying I think she's right, but that's a good one. But beyond that, I haven't studied it. What I want to do is another recap of Tyler Robinson case. I could keep doing it because I want everyone to know it well. For myself too. What do you guys think about that? Unless you have some other interesting things to watch. This is just me shooting the shit with you guys. By the way, is Thomas Massey a Jew hater? I didn't used to think so. I thought he was just a, like, isolationist. Like, I don't care about Israel. I don't care about anyone. That's fine. I can respect that. But when he just starts doing stuff like this, I think Tucker's kind of rubbing off on him. Focus and ask again. Okay, I'll have to save this. Or we could watch some Candy clips. Let's watch some Candace. Let's see what the latest from Candace is. Or are you guys gonna get nauseous? Okay, what are these powers that be that I don't think Thomas Massey is anti-Semitic, but what he did there was pretty anti-Semitic, and I don't think that you could go to a dinner party at Tucker Carlson's house and leave without being a little bit more anti-Semitic. I think it's kind of like it rubs off. Play Ami. I don't want to. I don't want to play Candace. But I'll play Candace so we could laugh at her. Look at this was my history. Candace Owens retarded. Oh, nice. I'm third on the list, even though it's just 194. Let's see what this.
Candace Owens is a world-renowned. I'm here on the PVD podcast set, and I'm all alone. Why? Because PVD and the crew are out of the office hosting the debate between Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson on the Charlie Kirk murder trial. Now, I'm expecting a heated debate, a lot of fireworks. Everybody knows this guy, Andrew Wilson, is a world-renowned debater, and everybody knows that Candace Owens is a world-renowned. Anyway, I'm getting ready to watch the debate. Who you got?
I kind of want to watch the debate a little bit. Oh, Andrea Burkhart was on Charlie Kirk? Was that recently, though? If it's from a long time ago, I don't know. I'll subscribe to her, though. Okay, you know what? Would you guys have fun? You saw Andrea Burkhart. I don't see it on Andrea Burkhart. Let's see. Maybe if I look under most recent, let's say today. It seems to be a 2-hour show about. Oh, okay, cool. I was gonna say it seems like it's about the the Carmelo Anthony case. I'm gonna try and find where Andrew Burkhart talks.
4 points to the right. That is why they hated him so much.
Yet another illegal alien has been arrested for a brutal stabbing murder in the sanctuary jurisdiction, and now a mother is dead.
Do you have a good timestamp, Alita? Sedona, you may not hate all Jews and all Israelis, okay? That may not be your position, but I'm telling you that it's the position of a lot of people, okay? So just know which crowd you're in. Yeah, you can have a problem with the Israeli government. You can have a problem with some Jews. That's fine. Jews are like every other people. There's bad ones, there's good ones, there's everything in between. I personally am not one of these people that thinks so, Jews are perfect, you know? And I don't like it when that's even implied because it makes it sound like we're different. Jews are like any other people. There's bad ones, there's good ones. But what makes Jews kind of unique is that there are a lot of people in the world that are infected with hatred of Jews. Lots and lots of people. Yeah, there's hatred of other people, of course, and it's all bad. But there's something unique about the hatred of Jews. So I would just ask you to be more perceptive in your chats and stuff when you're saying stuff that's like you're against certain Jews and certain that's probably not what most of the other people in the chat that are agreeing with you mean. Sedona. Yeah, I want to see Alita. Good, it was good advice. I want to see. I've been following a lot of her Substack, so I want to see.
Burkhart.substack.com. Andrea, welcome back.
Looks like I found it.
You know that we crave your analysis because you don't let us down gently. You tell us terrible news like we have to wait till 2028, and then you post those clips or respond to them online and you break our heart further. Just kidding. You're just kind of a straight shooter. You don't pick sides. You just call balls and strikes. And so we get what we get with you, all right? So we got a bunch of questions post this debate between Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson. And there's just kind of a lot of controversy swirling because each new defense or state brief, it raises new questions. Okay, I think key among those, and you saw this from the debate certainly, was this idea that Candace's position was that the parents they don't believe that Tyler is guilty. And
wait, can I say something? Because I want to say it for the record before Andrea says it, because she's probably going to say the same thing. I could be wrong, but I just don't want it to seem like I'm just copying what she says. The defense could have called the parents to testify, and they would have if the parents are claiming that the statements attributed to them, in which they say that Tyler Robinson admitted it to them, which was basically the foundational cause for the arrest warrant. If that's untrue, the defense would have called them to the stand at the preliminary hearing. Let's see if that's what she says. I have not seen this before.
But they won't talk yet because of strategy, because of strategery. So the question is sort of a larger one. If there is exculpatory evidence at the preliminary hearing stage of this whole ordeal, would they bring it up? If they're sitting on something like the parents actually don't think he did it, would they bring that up in the preliminary hearing?
Sure. So in almost 20 years practicing as a criminal defense attorney, I cannot imagine having exculpatory evidence and not bringing it up at the probable cause stage, particularly in a context like this. The whole point of the preliminary hearing is to determine whether there is justification to believe that.
Jimmy, that's so nice of you. I can't get super chats yet. I need 1,000 subscribers. So what you can do is subscribe, share my channel, get a whole bunch of subscribers, and then you can give me a super chat. But that's kind. First time I've even been asked that.
person may be involved with this particular crime so as to justify moving forward and requiring the full trial process. So if you have evidence that your defendant didn't do it, isn't guilty, then the probable cause determination is absolutely the time when you would be bringing that up.
I'm right. You guys, everyone needs to tell OMB or GMB or whatever who said that I don't know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. When it comes to being a defense lawyer, now here's where I admit, sometimes I don't know stuff off the top of my head in terms of what's the name of that statute, what's the name of that case law, what's the specific evidentiary rule. Those things I don't have the best memory for, but when it comes to logic, reason, and zealously advocating on behalf and most of the law, I know my stuff. And Andrea knows it a lot better than me, but I know it enough. And she's saying what I've been saying from the get-go, which is that, and I've been saying this in the context of an alibi. If there was an alibi presented at the prelim, if it's compelling, Tyler Robinson would be out of jail now. They would be looking for someone else.
Because if you can win that issue at this stage, you don't have to take the case any further and assume any risk of a bad trial outcome.
Right. So just to be clear, you're saying it's not some 5D chess. It's not 7D chess. There's not like some grand plan here that they're going to like drop the hammer at the actual trial and be like, see, we told you this shouldn't have gone to trial. They would have brought this up now. You would see it in the briefings. You would have saw it in the preliminary hearing in July 6th to the 10th. Those things would have come out. So other buckets. Yeah, go ahead.
It's extraordinarily unlikely that there is some kind of 5D chess going on here. And part of
Again, that's what I said, that it's not impossible. Every defense lawyer is different, and this is not a science. It's an art more than a science. So is it possible that they're strategizing to bring up stuff at trial that they're not bringing up now? Yeah. But they're letting their client rot in jail for 1 to 2 years? Specifically when I'm thinking of alibi in particular. Now, there could be like little bit of details, like maybe we don't want to bring up this little inconsistency right now because it'll be more punchier at trial if they don't know that it's coming. Yeah, little things. But we're talking about alibi. No, you bring it up now at the prelim. Or not now, but at the prelim. It comes to the parents. And again, I keep bringing this up too. The prosecution doesn't have access to Tyler Robinson, but the defense does. So if Tyler Robinson tells them, I was at a steakhouse in Panguitch, they would be the ones to go to the steakhouse and get proof. Not Diligent Denizen or Candace Retard Cockroach. Okay? If you're still watching Candace Owens and you think that she's uncovering anything, you are being conned. Okay? If you're sending Candace Owens super chats because you think she's getting to the truth, okay, send me all of your money, wire me $50,000, and I will give you $1 million. Okay?
the reason why is because, especially in a high-profile case like this, there are two things going on. One, you're fighting the case itself. You're dealing with the court standards, what they're actually there to accomplish, the scope of your right to present evidence that tends to negate probable cause in order to try to get your client out of this process and out of jail at the earliest opportunity. But this is a very high profile case, and these attorneys are extremely aware that there's also a lot of public attention on it. And so to not strategically use information to benefit your client's position in the court of public opinion in a high-profile case like this, it also strikes me as extremely unlikely.
All right, Blake, I know you got a question.
By the way, if anyone knows, but first off, thank you to Alita for pointing this video out. This is why I go live without anything even planned, is because I know you guys will point me to some good stuff. But if anyone has any way to contact Andrea, I would love to do some collaboration with her. No, I don't mind Sedona. She's a little, but she's not. She hasn't said anything really offensive. I don't think she hates Jews. So we're gonna let her stay, and I'm assuming it's a her. By the way, hi Dempsey and Saves. Alita, yeah, I know she's on Substack, but I'm a okay, let's keep going.
But I also wanted to say, send us your emails, freedom@charliekirk.com, freedom@charliekirk.com. If you have questions for Andrea, send them in. We're going to do a rapid fire, quick. I know we all are very verbose around here, but we're going to try and do a rapid fire audience question. So send them in, freedom@charliekirk.com. We want to answer your questions.
I have another good video that we're going to watch after this one, which is of the prosecutor on Charlie Kirk show, saying that he's never seen a case with this much evidence. And I agree. I was asked this on a comment. Have I ever seen a case with this much evidence? No. There is one thing that's missing that you get in some cases, which is an eyewitness to the actual crime. So like, an attempted murder where the victim is still alive and they can point out who did it. That's another open and shut situation. But in terms of just the variety of evidence with DNA, weapon, engraved bullets with the engraving tool, text message confessions, Discord message confessions, confessions to lover, confessions to parents, surveillance footage, cell phone tower site location data, all that stuff. In terms of like the variety of evidence, I've never seen a case with this much.
Andrea, I have another question. Do you have a question? You can go. Okay. You can go. So the other claim here and you saw this in the state's last 19-page brief, which was that they're kind of going through inferences versus speculation, informed inferences versus speculation, and it kind of made me think of some of the other themes of that debate where they're talking about hearsay, right? So at a preliminary hearing, reliable hearsay is admissible, and there was claims that it was all reliable hearsay, that there was nothing.
I said this on Joshua Carr. It was not all even reliable hearsay. All the in-court testimony is not hearsay. All the photographs of the weapon and the bullets, all that stuff, that's not hearsay. That's evidence. And the text messages and Discord chat messages, which were sent by Tyler Robinson, that's not hearsay. So the only thing that would really be hearsay was the recorded statement by Lance Twiggs. That was basically it. And then the medical report. That was it. Everything else is not hearsay.
That was not hearsay. Why don't you explain the difference between a hearsay, reliable hearsay, and a preliminary hearing? What's admissible, and what does that really indicate?
Sure. So Utah has this very specific definition of what reliable hearsay is. Their constitution, their statutes allow reliable hearsay to be used at this stage of the proceeding. The Utah Supreme Court has upheld that in past challenges. But reliable hearsay, it's technical. It's not just anything somebody says can come into court. It has to meet certain minimum qualifications qualifications to fit this definition. So there were several things that were presented at the preliminary hearing that were not reliable hearsay. And the best example of that was the very first witness who testified was a law enforcement officer who was present. I'm not sure formal law enforcement or just the university police, but was present for the events and testified about his personal perceptions of what he observed, how that led him to the rooftop and discover the sniper pad, and basically all of the investigation that unfolded from that. So no, it's not all reliable hearsay. What this rule essentially does is it allows them to, because this is a preliminary proceeding, this is a screening process to decide if the case should go forward to trial or not. It's not itself a full trial where all of this evidence is going to be tested. So what it does is it simply allows them to use materials that are pretty commonly relied on by the attorneys and all the participants in the course of a case. Things like the police reports, forensic evaluations, and evidence of that nature, to use that in lieu of requiring the person who wrote the report to fly into Utah, arrange their day, etc., and be present to give live testimony in the courtroom. So it's not an indication particularly of the quality of this evidence, nor does that preclude the defense from being able to use their rights to present evidence and their rights to cross-examination. Right.
And if you remember, the defense called two witnesses themselves because they didn't just rely on reliable hearsay. The two witnesses were the actual, I think, the ballistics examiner and the DNA examiner. So normally, reliable hearsay would have been just the ballistics report and the DNA report. But the defense was allowed the opportunity to call those the authors of those reports so they could cross-examine them. That was pretty much all they did in the defense. You got Patrina here. Let me see.
To raise points that tend to negate probable cause.
So, last question, 30 seconds. Silence or challenges to not equal possession. That's the other point they're making. That in these defense briefs, they're not saying things that you're hearing on Candace Owens' show, for example. They're not saying it's a patsy. So they don't seem to be arguing that Tyler Robinson didn't pull the trigger or something, or that he wasn't there on campus, for example. So they're silent on some of these controversies or these conspiracies. They're not. You know what? Hold that over the break because we got to do a read. It's a bigger.
And this also came up with Josh Carr. I said what I think Andrew is going to say, which is that it's wrong to characterize what the defense is saying as conceding anything. They're not saying that Tyler Robinson is guilty. They're choosing their battles. They know that this case is going to be bound over, especially for the murder charge, but probably most of the charges. I just think count 6 is going to be dropped. But they know it. The evidence is overwhelming. Yeah, I'm sorry, it is. But so they're choosing not to argue against that evidence, but that doesn't mean that they're admitting that all the evidence is accurate or the inferences from the evidence should be that Tyler Robinson is guilty. They're not admitting it. They're just choosing not to argue that in their briefs. So I just want to make sure that, because I've heard that mischaracterized by people, coming from our side as like, oh, you see, the defense is admitting it. It's not exactly true.
Question, but please send your questions. freedom@charliekirk.com for Andrea. freedom@charliekirk.com, and we're going to try and get to as many as we possibly can. freedom@charliekirk.com. Strong Cell is amazing. And if you wonder how Blake and I wake up all chipper and we're ready to do the show, he's already here. Skin. They did admit not challenge the substance. Okay, they're saying that the defense is not challenging the substance. Is it a deliberate, meaning like their silence on some of the central claims? Are they
What do you mean there's a chance that Tyler may go free? Sedona. I mean, there's always a chance. If you mean there's a very slight chance, yeah, there's a very slight chance. If that's what your point is.
Admitting guilt.
Yeah, so I think part of the challenge here is that there is a lot of language being used, a lot of equivocation about language that's being used, and a lot of conflation of different things. So in their filings, the defense has not admitted anything. The defense has not made any kind of formal admission of guilt or
They did admit that he was in the stairwell, though, right, Andrea?
I'm sorry?
They did admit that it was him.
No, they didn't. They're saying for purposes of the brief, they're not admitting that he was in the stairwell. Not yet.
On the surveillance video.
I would not count that as an admission. I would call that careless wording on the part of the defense, but I wouldn't necessarily call that an admission. That I think is different from a concession, which is refusing to argue a position that you might otherwise be expected to argue. And so in the context of this case, what you have is the state arguing there's sufficient evidence here to believe that Tyler Robin is the perpetrator, and therefore he should be bound over for trial. The defense has raised an argument that hearsay evidence should not be allowed to decide whether or not he should be bound over on.
No, so Donna, Tyler Robinson's not going free. No, you're watching too much Candace Owens and Baron Coleman if you think that.
Murder charges, but they aren't arguing that there's any substantive problem with that evidence. So essentially, they are not taking a position contrary to the state's argument that assuming the court's going to allow the reliable hearsay to be used, as the Utah Constitution says, as the Utah Supreme Court says, that there is in fact going to be probable cause to bind him over on these charges. So they're not contesting that substantive position. They are making a procedural argument. That's what I think is fairly characterized as a concession.
Okay, fair enough. And so that's why so much of it is fixated on the aggravating factors. Okay, let's go to the emails here.
All right, well, we've got several here, so let's try to get a few reviews. The first one from Charlene. Why isn't there a ruling to stop all the talking about this case online before the trial?
First Amendment. That's my prediction.
I think fake news hurts justice.
We're doing rapid fire.
Because of the First Amendment, we have a strong preference against what they call prior restraints in the United States. So gag orders generally, the circumstances in which those are allowed are extremely limited. You can't gag the public. You can't gag the media.
All right, fair enough.
She said it much better than me, but I was right.
Better, and notably much better than the UK, where it's very common for them to gag almost all discussion. We've seen problems with that. All right, we got this from HC. What would be the expected timeline for a trial, you think, at this point?
1 to 2 years. 1 year being the low end, 2 years being the high end.
And if convicted, a potential execution if the death penalty is imposed.
Oh, execution, 5 to 10 years. I mean, I don't know if Utah's like fast or swift with it, but I mean, there's so many different appeal processes for executions. It's people spend 30 years on death row.
Great questions. Trial, I had previously said early 2028. Since we're approaching September without bind over, I'm going to probably have to extend that out now to more like the end of 2028. In terms of if there were a conviction, the timeline for execution, that can be decades. Utah is not known for being quick with its death row. They have inmates currently on death row that have spent more than 3 decades there. And are still.
Am I 2 for 2 people? Am I 2 for 2?
Actively litigating their cases. So I would not expect a rapid execution, meaning like earlier than 20 years.
Andrew, I have a tack onto that. How do they determine the mode of execution in Utah? Because it's one of the few states that notably has like firing squads and things like that. How do they figure out how they're going to do it?
This one I have no idea.
Yeah, so these are decisions that are made legislatively. They have to approve methods of execution. And so the primary method of execution in Utah remains lethal injection. However, in the event that the lethal injection drugs are not able to be secured, or for some other reason they aren't able to carry it out by that method, then Utah does allow the firing squad as an alternative.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, Blake and Andrew both seem like just decent, good people, which is why Candy Roach hates them. Do you notice how she only hates the good ones? She doesn't hate Tucker. She doesn't hate Anna Kasparian. She doesn't hate Bassem Youssef. She only hates the good people. Do you notice that?
Yeah, kind of morbid to think about. All right, so we have another one from Katie. Can Andrea please go over the DNA and the degradation of DNA on what they mean by that?
Wasn't it like also fingerprints though? Like I could.
Okay, I'm gonna try and answer because I like to hear myself talk. I just want to see if I'm on point. So first off, Candace Owens completely conflated DNA with fingerprints. I don't even know if any fingerprint evidence was discussed at the prelim. There was a lot of DNA. The DNA on the towel, there were two contributors, Lance Twiggs, Tyler Robinson. Tyler Robinson was by far the majority contributor. I forget off the top of my head, but I think something like 89%. By the way, I personally find it not at all surprising that Lance Twiggs' DNA is on any of these objects. They live together, especially the towel. I don't want to know what DNA was on it, but it's not surprising. I guarantee that if you take your towel and you go somewhere and you leave it, your spouse's DNA is also on that towel. Same thing with the screwdriver. Both of them DNA were on it, but Tyler was by far the main contributor. Now on the gun, they said that they had 5 different DNA profiles. Now, of those 5, I don't know who we know. I think one of them was Tyler Robinson's dad, Tyler Robinson's grandfather. But I don't think Lance Twiggs' DNA was even mentioned in relation to that. Now, why would Tyler Robinson's DNA be more degraded, presuming that he was the most recent person to handle the gun? There are so many different possibilities here. You could just ask any DNA expert. It does not mean that he must have handled it a longer time ago. Not at all. It could be that he wiped it down. It could be that when he took the shot, that combustion killed a lot of the DNA. It could be that because it was the most recent, it was the most acceptable to the environment. Whereas when you handle someone who handled the gun and then put it into a storage box, that DNA solidifies there. It could be that Tyler Robinson handled parts of the gun that were not the best parts for retaining DNA. Whereas Tyler Robinson's grandfather was maybe cleaning the gun and getting into the crevices where the DNA residue is better maintained. It could be that Tyler Robinson is just not a natural DNA shedder. Different people have different DNA qualities. Some people are sweatier. Some people, if you wash your hands more. All these little things could explain it. It has nothing to do, or I don't know if I could say it has nothing to do, but there are so many different variables that it really basically has nothing to do with the date or how long ago or the recency of the DNA deposit. But let's see how she explains it.
I actually legitimately got confused. Were they talking about fingerprint degradation or DNA? The floor is towards Andrew.
Yeah, dive into that.
Well, so DNA degradation is such a massive topic. I've actually been very much thinking I probably need to do a video on this to spell some of it out. But when you're talking about touch DNA in particular, meaning when you swab areas, not because there's a blood stain there or something like that, a biological fluid, but just because you believe somebody may have physically contacted a particular item, you're dealing with touch DNA. And what you get from touch DNA is highly variable. Sometimes it's very high quality, sometimes it's very low quality. We are only still in the early stages of understanding how humans transfer their own DNA into the environment. So the fact of degradation is pretty easy to observe in a DNA sample. There's literally a shape in the graph that is produced of the results that tells you that degradation is happening. What you cannot infer from the fact of degradation is what it means, how it happened, why it happened, whether the DNA was already degraded before it was deposited, which can happen with certain skin cells are already degraded, or whether it's the result of different environmental factors that were present at the time of the deposition. So there's a great amount of variability in these samples, and that's why, as we heard in the preliminary hearing, the Department of Justice analysts, people who work for the Department of Justice, they are not allowed to testify in court about any opinions that would relate to the timing of samples being deposited.
The question. It doesn't tell you when it was deposited.
3 for 4. Okay, which isn't so good. It's 75%, but I had no idea about the Utah execution methods, so I'm based in California.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
so
makes
that
perfect
would
sense.
be a very unscientific claim.
Okay.
All right, this one, I'll admit it's getting more into the conspiracy direction, but let's engage with it. This is from Nellie. Why were items that belonged to Charlie and were part of the crime scene, his necklace, his microphone, a jacket of his, given to Erica? Also, why dig up?
Okay, you guys, I want you to think about it, and we're going to answer it together. I just need to get some ice. Okay, did everyone have a chance to think about it? Because I didn't really catch the full question, but I think it was asking why was this evidence given back to Erica? And my answer, and by the way, I'm just assuming that Andrea Burkhart is 100%. Is that once you swab it for DNA, once you run it through the evidence collection, if you're talking about a cell phone, once you duplicate it digitally, you have everything you need, and then it can be returned to the owner or the next of kin. It has no more evidentiary value, and there might be some sentimental value to the next of kin. That would be my explanation.
The crime scene 10 inches down and then speedily pour.
We've got a minute and a half left here, Andrew. So.
Okay, with the concrete issue, I forget who was it. One of my Genius subscribers brought up that it's a biological hazard to just leave the blood on the ground. Once you photograph, collect samples, and basically, clear the crime scene, you return it back to the owners. And if they want to cover it up, which I'm sure the university did because they don't want to have it permanently remembered as the site of a murder. This was a high traffic area for students, and they don't want a very morbid seen to just stay indefinitely, they're going to cover it with concrete.
Yeah, so first off, what we actually know about the investigation is very much an evolving question because a lot of this information is, we only know about it because...
And I was just about to say that what we know about the investigation is very much an evolving question.
Search warrants. It hasn't come up in case yet, in the case yet. And search warrants are often sealed for a certain length of time. They're also a little bit hard to track down given Utah's filing system. So we have learned that personal property of Charlie was the subject of one of the very earliest search warrants that was issued in the case. That would include things like his phone, his clothing. So we know that that was at least initially in the possession of law enforcement for them to do what they needed to do with it. With respect to the crime scene, it's normal for police to hold the crime scene, secure it for as long as they need to do their physical investigation. There are steps that they can take. Very common one these days is called Faro scanning. It's a 3D scan that allows them to create a digital copy of like the measurements and where things were located and stuff like that to be able to recreate the crime scene later. But the general idea is that initial period of the crime scene being secured is as long as it needs to be for police to get what they want, and once they're done with what they need, they return it to the property owner.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Andrea,
Thank you so much.
Really,
A lot of
quick.
questions.
A lot of questions. Thank you, guys.
I would say that I got 4 out of 5. Okay. I wanted to watch the prosecutor. I saw clips, but I want to see the prosecutor. No, okay, sorry. So, what's the name of the prosecutor? I could look at my X because it was on my X. Let me see. J-Town. Yeah.
Breaking that the state of Utah has responded to the defense in the title.
So Utah time is the same as California time. I thought Utah might have been central. Well, thank you so much, Alita, for staying up with me. We appreciate your presence. And thank you, everyone. But a special thank you to those of you on the East Coast.
The Robinson hearing. And we have J-Town joining us. He's a career federal prosecutor, knows this stuff inside and out. You've known him if you watch this show. He's helped us break down ATF reports and the like because he's seen hundreds and hundreds of them himself. Jay, welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. Honored to have you. You've read the state's reply memo. Again, it's a bit of a volley back and forth. So the state, it's called a bind over. The state issued its first.
Alita. The volume of the video is a little low. There we go. Okay, let me know if it's still low.
Position, a memo, a brief. Then the defense responds, basically says, if all of these things are true, it's still shouldn't be a death penalty case, basically. The aggravated, add-ons should not be relevant. They made their argument. Now, the state has responded. When you look at this 19-page memo, what are you looking at? What do you see? Do you think they did a competent job here?
I thought they did a great job. In fact, the prosecution hip-checked the defense pretty hard against the board.
So this is another thing I called, even before I saw this. I thought it was pretty unusual that the prosecution accused the defense of violating their ethical duty of candor to the court. That is not something that attorneys like to do to one another until they get on really bad terms, right? Usually you could just chalk it up to a mistake and you argue against that mistake. But to say that they're they're committing an ethical violation because of their false representations of case law or something, pretty unusual. Maybe it's not as unusual in Utah or amongst certain prosecutions, but if I'm on good terms with my opposing counsel and they file a brief where they accuse me of an ethical violation, oh, that's gonna rile me up.
Of Utah jurisprudence, it was actually, pretty systematic in their response. The evidence is overwhelming against Tyler Robinson. So, to me,
did he just use the O word? Oh my God, Candace, we have another Fed slopper, another Israeli Mossad agent.
Some of this didn't probably have to happen because anybody with a functioning limbic system would know that there's probable cause to believe that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie.
Why, thank you, Sedona. Honestly, I think that you're one of the good ones, but don't let yourself fall into the cult. Just don't do it.
And that there were other people in the, and he did so for his political expression, which is one of the aggravators, and also that it was endangering the public. The people around Charlie Kirk or behind Charlie Kirk are in that line of fire. But the prosecution took the extra step, which I think the Kirk family appreciates and everybody watching this appreciates, to explain why, and to explain why the arguments made by the defense were false. Their reading of the law was just wrong, right on down to them calling reasonable inferences, which is always a postulate in the law that is for a fact finder, and calling that such things as speculation.
Yeah. Okay, so Jay, pause right there. So when I'm reading the brief, again, I'm not a lawyer. Blake sometimes plays one on TV, but there is a lot of ink spilled in this memo that is arguing about the difference between reasonable inferences and speculation. From a legal perspective, why is that important, and what is the distinction?
Right. So speculation is
Now, this is the type of question that if I'm asked on an interview, I might trip myself over.
If you're speculating, you can't get to even probable cause, or certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt. But let me give you a great example. And this is what I would tell juries in my murder cases and my death penalty cases. If you went to bed and then you woke up and across your driveway there were deer tracks across the snow, you would know three things. Now, you weren't there, you didn't see any of the following, but you would be able to reasonably infer that the following three things happened. One, that it snowed last night. Two, that a deer crossed your driveway last night. And three, that the deer crossed the driveway after it snowed. And those are all reasonable inferences that none of us saw. None of the 12 jurors were there that day. And this is just sort of common misdirection by defense counsel to say, you're just speculating. Sure. Somebody could have hung from a platform like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible and with a snow machine and planted, little deer tracks in the driveway. That's possible, but it's not reasonable to infer that, right? That can't be your first thought. And that's really what the state is saying. It is the function of every fact finder. In this case, it's the judge. Later on, it will be a jury to determine whether or not these reasonable inferences, that people were in the line of fire, or that if he had missed, he could have killed somebody else and put other people in the public in great danger. And let's just get something clear. And here's why that's such an idiotic argument by the defense. We wouldn't be here if he didn't miss, right? So, or if he missed, rather. I mean, the fact is, he hit his target because he had political motivations to kill Charlie Kirk, but he still endangered others by taking that shot. There's always a risk that Tyler Robinson doesn't shoot so well that it actually lodges into the spine of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I wouldn't have characterized it the same way as this guy because I don't even think he had to miss to put other people at great risk of death. It could have ricocheted off him. It also could have gone through him and hit somebody behind him. Somebody could have jumped in front of the bullet. So it's not just about missing. I mean, that's a good point too. He could have missed, but it's not just about missing.
Such that only small particles of that 30-06 round, that 30 caliber class bullet, exited Charlie Kirk. And so, the defense is doing all they can to make arguments.
And to be clear, Jay, yeah, there wasn't any of those. Nothing did exit. It apparently the bullet broke apart, ended up in his chest cavity. But yeah, he didn't know that was going to be the outcome of that. Also, they made the point in the brief that the questioner's head was about at the same head level as Charlie's, was about at the same head level, if not slightly above. So he endangered the questioner, if nobody.
You guys need to tell this OMB or GMB or whatever. Lynn Pell had my back like crazy, but he said I didn't know what I was talking about. That pissed me off. And he's a fan of Gary, so I'm like, I know what I'm talking about. You guys, I'm going to step away, but I'm listening.
Yeah, but obviously, then they make the point that there are other people to the left and to the right, behind, in the proximity. They made the point that he visited the location twice earlier that morning. He saw that there was people around the perimeter of that tent. Blake, you wanted to chime in?
Well, they have the back and forth about aggravating factors. Is this valid? What does Supreme Court precedent say? But I think the most important thing that people care about most is we have 60 or so pages between the defense filing and the prosecution filing, and maybe a grand total of 1.5 pages dedicated to the core question of, is Tyler Robinson credibly accused of murder?
It's a great point.
Because the defense basically didn't contest anything other than to throw out one page to say, we said some of the stuff was hearsay, just the text message Lance Twig stuff. They don't address DNA, they don't address the rifle, they don't address the camera footage, whether that's Robinson. And that's what they say in this prosecution filing.
Yeah, here's the opening from this prosecution.
Again, this is why you guys come back to me. So you guys can tell I know what I'm talking about a little bit. That the defense briefing, and Tyler Robinson has a good defense team. They know what they're doing. So their briefing was good for Tyler Robinson's defense, bad for the conspirators. Candy, you've attached yourself to the stupidest conspiracy theories in history, and God willing, you go down with them. Because they're retarded. You too, Barron. You too, Diligent. You too, Project Constitution. You too, Tucker. All of you who have identified yourself with the theory that Tyler Robinson didn't commit this crime, there's going to be a lot more evidence, and everybody who knows about the law, Baron Coleman excluded, knows that Tyler Robinson is going down, and he did it.
Memo, I guess it was filed last night. Defendant does not challenge the substance of the evidence demonstrating that he was the person who crawled to the sniper's perch on the Losi building rooftop, fired the fatal shot that killed Mr. Charlie Kirk, hid the rifle in a wooded area, got rid of some of the clothing he was wearing, and told his roommate to delete their texts about the shooting. Prosecutors wrote. So that's that part. That's the very beginning. I mean, straight to the point. Do you like that?
Yeah, that's how prosecutors I mean, that's how lawyers write. You want a good sentence, opening sentence.
Approach. Did you like the way that they kind of just led with that and then deliberated the aggravating factors?
I do, because look, at the end of the day, right now, I think that the prosecution and the defense would agree. The defense is trying to save Tyler Robinson's life. They don't believe that he's going to be found not guilty of anything, and the prosecution wants to put him to death. And what the prosecution did just in that one sentence was tamp down any ridiculous arguments that anybody is making, whether it's in the Twitter sphere or in the state of Utah, that it could have been somebody else.
Guys, let's talk about finding something real. You deserve.
He just said what I said.
Jay, there was a big debate.
You think Tyler has bad lawyers? I think they're doing what they can, man. This is a hard case for a defense. What are you gonna do? And they're probably doing. They're gonna try and get as much evidence as possible excluded. That's their only hope here. If they can find some procedural or technical error in the search warrants or the way the warrants were executed and get the text messages excluded, that's their only hope. But short of that, and even with that, there's too much stuff. So even if you get the text, and the text messages to me are like the killer in the case. But even if you get that excluded, you have the Discord messages. Okay, you get that excluded, you have testimony from Lance Twiggs. You have testimony from the parents. You have the gun. You have the surveillance. You have the geolocation. So they're hoping for some retards. They're hoping for Candace Owens on the jury. That's what they want. They're going to ask, this is voir dire, is when you question the potential jurors to exclude. And in California, you take turns excluding jurors. I don't know if it's the same process in Utah. But first you ask the general jury pool. They have a questionnaire that they all fill out that's given by the court. Then both sides can ask questions. You exclude jurors for cause if they are sick or if they know any of the witnesses or defendant in the case. All those people are excluded. Then you take turns excluding the jurors, potential jurors, right? And as soon as both of you either agree to, in this case, it's going to be 8, and then you do it for the alternates, then you have your jury. Or if you run out of exclusions, I don't know. I think in California, it's been a while since I've done a jury trial, but I think it's something like 60 exclusions. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since, but it might be closer to like 25 or something. I forget off the top of my head. Maybe 60 total, 30 for both sides. Anyways, then you have your jury. So, but you get a chance to talk with the potential jurors one-on-one and as a group. And I have a feeling that, like, the type of questions the defense wants to ask is, who here knows that thunder comes from lightning? And everyone that raises their hand, they're going to write down that they're going to exclude those people. Because they want some stupid-ass candy followers in the jury. That's what the defense wants. I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but that's the idea.
That happened on Friday between Andrew Wilson and Candace Owens. And one of the things that came up was this concept of, well, the parents apparently had a role in turning them in. We know this from the charging documents. They recognized their son based on surveillance images, stills that were taken from the surveillance footage. There was a phone call. They worked with a local sheriff or a former sheriff, deputy, or whatever his particular title was. And he ended up turning himself in, right? Partly because of the surveillance images. Now,
there is a suggestion that maybe the parents don't believe that he's guilty or something like that. I think that's hogwash. There's no evidence to suggest that at this point. But had that been,
You guys, I understand the problem everyone has with Sedona. I get it, but I come across people that are such Jew haters online that, like, unless you're a straight up Jew hating piece of shit, I have some more grace. Or if you're any type of hater, or if you like are like super disgusting toward Erica Kirk or so, you know. So if you're just kind of a weirdo and Sedona kind of just seems like she's a little kooky, I give her a little bit of grace.
in the case, would that be something that the defense would have reasonably brought up during a preliminary hearing?
Yes. The same came up with Andrea Burkhart, and yes, I said it even before I saw it.
Yes, they would have brought all of these ridiculous conspiracy theories would have been brought out at the prelim, because the whole goal was to not have the most significant charges like murder bound over for trial. And so every theory that was available to the defense could have been brought up, and they never brought up the fact that it was somebody else. They never they contested the DNA findings and things like that, but that's just going to happen. What we haven't seen yet really in evidence, we know about it, we can infer some of it, but the mom and dad are going to testify. That sheriff's deputy are going to testify. Twiggs is going to testify under oath about the admissions that Tyler Robinson made to them. That's why, if you're the defense lawyer, you know that evidence is coming, which is why you're not saying, it was somebody else, right? I mean, it's absolutely a ridiculous statement to make given the evidence that I've seen. I haven't seen a stronger murder case in the 28 years that I've served in the prosecution business. And
See, that's crazy. I think he's saying that for the reason that I said it, is that there's so much evidence of different kinds here. It makes it such a strong case. But there's been murder cases, obviously, where it's two people taking part in a murder and one of them turns on the other. So, that's a pretty strong case too. I'm sure he's prosecuted cases like that. Or cases where it's a murder and an attempted murder and the person that survives can call out the murderer. That's pretty strong too. But in terms of like an assassination with no surviving victim or eyewitness, because it was a sniper, this is as strong as you can expect.
Prosecuted well over 10,000 defendants and investigated and prosecuted hundreds of homicide cases, to include death penalty cases. I've never seen evidence this strong. The only defense that I see they have left is to just try to save his life by saying he's a young man and get the jury to nullify.
I said this as well. I'm not sure if Sedona's really rage baiting. I think she's. I don't know. Nikki and Jujubee you guys are the mods, so you choose.
Some of these aggravators. But the fact is, Charlie Kirk was murdered because of his political viewpoints by Tyler Robinson. The evidence is overwhelming, and even Tyler Robinson's parents know this.
Yeah, and we talked with, I texted briefly with Andrea Burkhart, who's she's a streamer, covers these cases. I believe she was a former, actually, courtroom attorney. Anyways, she wrote back basically and said, the defense brief is pretty much exactly what I predicted they'd argue. This was back when the defense brief just dropped. I think the one witness tampering charge gets dropped, but the aggravator sticks.
I called that.
Is that how you see this probably playing out, or do you think the witness tampering is strong as well?
I don't know why anybody would argue that the witness tampering wasn't strong because he said delete all these text messages or I'm telling you what I did, right?
That's count 5. That one we think is going to stick. It's count 6 that I don't think is going to stick.
So I've admitted to a crime. There's evidence of a crime now on your phone, Lance, but delete it. Delete that evidence.
That's count 5. So I actually get a point ahead of this guy. It's not a competition. I'm just pissed off at that GMB guy. Said he didn't know what I'm talking about.
Right? And don't talk to anybody. Don't tell anybody about this. So I think it all gets found over.
Well, so I do want to bring up one other
No,
thing.
count 6.
I have been personally really.
I mean, he might be right.
I just saw this on X from an account called Ally J Kiss, ALLY J Kiss. People can check it out for themselves. But basically, one of the ongoing questions that a lot of people have had was there seemed to be prior knowledge in the social media sphere. People were suggesting that Charlie was going to be murdered that day before it happened. Now, the truth is,
they probably, you see, when it comes to this conspiracy, I don't know. Maybe there's prior knowledge amongst the furry trans group or something. But I imagine that hindsight kind of makes it look that way. I bet that if you look back at all of his public events, you're going to find a lot of people saying that or similar type stuff at his other events where he wasn't shot and killed. So it looks like a really significant thing now that it happened. But if it happens every time, I mean, if those messages get sent around all the time, then you realize it's just kind of a coincidence. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. I'm always curious to hear. I personally think that this is a lone wolf. I could be wrong, but I don't think there was anybody else besides Tyler involved with foreknowledge. The Discord chat people, from what we've seen, seem like they were surprised that this happened. Lance Twiggs, I don't think he had any involvement. Those text messages between them indicate that. So I think it was all Tyler. But if you think that this was part of and I know you guys aren't stupid, so none of you really buy into the crazy conspiracies with Israel and stupid shit. But if you think that there was like a furry trans or whatever group that was kind of planning this with Tyler, let me know. I personally don't think so. Voice to text hates everyone, Dempsey. Yeah. I cannot tell you how many times I now have like a disclaimer text message saved, which is that I text via dictation, so please excuse all the errors. Yeah, I'm sure that they looked into it. I know that they looked into it. And if you look at the search warrants, there was even I think an Iranian person that they did a search warrant, executed a search warrant on their phone and their data, and they found that they were far away by the time it happened. But somebody that said something beforehand and was around UVU ahead of time, or near the time, it wasn't an Israeli. It was actually someone named Omar. So I think that's a Muslim name. Not that I'm suggesting anything nefarious, but I'm just saying that they looked into that. They also executed a search warrant on the phone and the data relating to that first, schizophrenic or whatever he was that said it was me. They follow those leads. I think the FBI should investigate Max Blumenthal. I don't know for what for. Maybe for being a traitor going to Iran, but that guy is a sick. You want to talk about an imposter Jew? I assume he's Jewish with that name, but maybe not. Was it Trans-Iranian Armed Queers of Utah? Was that who he was? I thought it was just somebody who like posted on social media that Charlie was gonna die, posted that ahead of time, and they followed through on it, but they found no involvement. And again, you probably it seems significant after the fact, but I bet again, if you look at all of his speaking tours, you're probably going to find people ahead of time that says Charlie going to die, and it only seems significant this time. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be investigated. I'm just pointing out, you think that Lance knows more than he's admitted? Maybe. Um, yeah, I think that's valid. I think it's valid. Yeah, well, Blumenthal always blames Israel. He's one of these people that just hates Israel. It's an obsession with him. I mean, I don't follow him, so I don't know, but I know that he goes to Iran and he sucks off the supreme leader. So, you know, anybody that does that is probably a loser that hates Israel. Also, the other thing is that if there was other people involved, I think that Tyler Robinson would be singing like a canary to save himself the death penalty. And yes, the prosecution, I've been predicting a plea bargain for life without parole. I don't know. I'm starting to maybe think a little bit less likely because the evidence is so overwhelming that maybe they just want the death penalty here. But if Tyler Robinson knew of co-conspirators, then yes, in exchange for testifying against them or providing evidence against them, he would get life without parole. Yeah, as for the Discord, I haven't seen everything from the Discord, but from the messages that we have seen subsequent to the murder, they didn't seem like, oh, Tyler carried it out. They weren't affirming anything. They seemed like, oh my God, Tyler did this kind of thing. So, and also there's a difference between, kind of talking offhand. And I'm not trying to excuse anybody, but people on Discord, in other states that never met Tyler or whatever, don't even know him, saying stuff and actually like helping him plan it out or like, having real involvement. That's different. But yeah, I mean, it's possible there's more people.
Is that a lot of people say a lot of crazy things on the internet, okay? But this has been an ongoing question that I have and still have. I want to know more about the Discord chat. There was some new evidence. Apparently, this person found a warrant that had been served, and it says this was obtained personally through a record search of Utah courts exchange public case search. So they went through and they found this one. You can throw up there's the warrant.
I just mentioned this. Omar Najira. Yeah, but they looked into it and they found that he was nowhere near the scene at the time, and then based on their investigation, he had no connection with Tyler. So, but you see, the FBI and the SBI and everyone else are following these leads. It's not like they're just captured Tyler and that's it.
And it was served against one of these people, and this account was somebody named Omar Naj R.A. Gowns. And it says, Charlie Kirk is coming to my college tomorrow. I really hope someone evaluates him, literally. Next quote, let's just say something big will happen tomorrow. And it's got this face. So these are the kind of...
By the way, Omar is not an Israeli or Jewish name. It's a Muslim name. Candy.
Things that we want answers to, right? Was there prior knowledge? Was there a greater network that radicalized him? Did people on the Discord chats know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And this is the first evidence that I've seen, maybe others exist, that this investigators looked into this guy, issued a search warrant of the person that posted this,
and actually went after him. Would you expect there's a number of these search warrants out there for people that expressed seemingly prior knowledge?
Well, I don't know if there'd be search warrants as often as there would be law enforcement that actually just go knock on the door. This is making a terroristic threat or an online threat, and depending on the state or the jurisdiction, that necessitates law enforcement knocking on your door. I would bet, and Andrew, you would know this better than maybe anybody except for Erica, that every time Charlie appeared somewhere, there was a similar sort of ugly statement of, I hope something bad happens to Charlie Kirk.
Didn't I say that?
So I don't think it's evidence of anything. That second tweet, let's just say something big's going to happen. I mean, who knows? But I don't think that that's some guy with insider knowledge. But I think they would get to the bottom of it pretty quickly.
This caused investigators to execute a search warrant on this guy's and the contents of his phone. Investigators did not believe this individual was the shooter, but he posted these things that seemed to indicate prior knowledge. So that is the first piece of evidence I've seen, because one of the narratives out there is that the feds looked only at Tyler Robinson. They didn't investigate anybody else. They ignored all the other surrounding evidence. This suggests that that's not true. At least there's one. I would presume there's 10 seconds.
And I would just simply say,
let's get into Andrea Burkhart, legal commentator, experienced trial and appellate litigator. You can follow her on Substack. We recommend you do that. Also, YouTube, on X, she's very active. AndreaBurkhart.substack.com. Andrea, welcome back to the show. You know that we.
Oh, this is what we just watched. Okay, so to recap, Candace Owens is a stupid cockroach. But she also happens to be a sewer rat. She is the demon spawn of a cockroach and a sewer rat. And that's the whole truth. But I want to just finish recapping where I started, and then I'm going to call it quits for the night. But the whole conspiracy about Israel, the whole thing, Charlie was in a WhatsApp group that included Josh Hammer and Rabbi Pesach Wolicki, and I think 6 or 7 others. Charlie put together this WhatsApp group to help him combat the anti-Israel nonsense. He wanted good talking points and good arguments. I think September 8th or September 9th, 1 or 2 days before Charlie's assassination, he sends a message on the WhatsApp group that he's pissed off that a Jewish donor was rescinding a $2 million donation to TPUSA because TPUSA was going to let Tucker Carlson, aka Goebbels, speak. And Charlie was pissed off about it because he's done so much for the Jewish community. He was pissed off about it. So he says that this leaves me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause, essentially. That message, either Andrew was a member of that group or somehow came across it. He shared it in good faith in the hopes of leaving no stone unturned with Joe Kent. Joe Kent, who has no investigative authority, as we heard from Dan Bongino, had nothing to do with the investigation, really, just trying to insert himself, leaks that to Cockroach. That's the whole basis of the whole Israel involvement. That's it. And this happened 2 days before. So thank you, everyone, for watching the whole truth. And please help me grow my channel. I love you all and appreciate everything.
you.